I'm going to sell you to the highest bidder, girl, whether you like it or not." Those words still burned in Evelyn's ears as the train rattled toward an unknown future. She'd just agreed to marry a complete stranger, a rancher who promised nothing but practical survival. No love, no warmth, just existence. But anything was better than the monster waiting back in San Antonio. Or so she thought. Because the man waiting at Red Hollow Station had eyes colder than a winter grave, and she'd just signed away her freedom to him with nothing but a newspaper clipping and 3 crumpled dollar bills. If you want to see how this desperate gamble plays out, stay with me until the end, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. Hit that like button, and let's dive in. The bruise on Evelyn's cheekbone had finally faded to a sickly yellow-green, barely visible under the powder she'd stolen from her stepmother's vanity the morning she ran. She touched it gently as the train swayed, feeling the tender spot beneath her fingertips. It didn't hurt anymore. Not physically, anyway. Outside the grimy window, Texas stretched endlessly, flat, brown, and hostile. The landscape looked about as welcoming as her stepfather's face when he was 3 whiskeys deep. Evelyn Mercer was 24 years old, and this was the 3rd time she'd tried to escape. The first time, she'd made it as far as Austin before Marcus Bellamy's men dragged her back. The second time, she'd hidden in a church basement for 2 days before the priest, paid handsomely, no doubt, turned her in. This time felt different, though she couldn't say why. Maybe because there was nothing left to lose. Maybe because the advertisement folded in her coat pocket promised something Marcus's money couldn't reach. She pulled it out now, the newsprint soft from constant handling. Seeking wife. Rancher, Red Hollow, Texas. Must be practical, hardworking. No children. Arrangement is for partnership only. Do not respond if expecting romance or affection. Reply to C. Boone, general delivery. Most women would have found it horrifying. Evelyn had found it perfect. She'd written back that same night, lying about almost everything. Said she was 26. Said she had experience with livestock, which was true only if you counted the neighbor's ornery cat. Said she understood the terms and expected nothing beyond room and board in exchange for honest work. She didn't mention Marcus Bellamy. Didn't mention the arranged marriage to his business associate, a 47-year-old banker named Horace Drummond who collected wives the way other men collected stamps. This would be his 3rd. Didn't mention how Marcus had grabbed her jaw the night she refused, squeezing until she thought her teeth might crack, and promised that one way or another she'd be Drummond's property within the month. "You're not even my real daughter," he'd hissed, his breath reeking of bourbon and cigars. "Your mother had the decency to die and leave you behind. Least you can do is fetch a decent price." That was 2 weeks ago. The train lurched and Evelyn's stomach lurched with it. She pressed her forehead against the cool glass, watching tumbleweeds race across the barren ground, like they were trying to escape something too. Red Hollow was the last stop on the line. The conductor had laughed when she bought the ticket. "Nothing out there but dust and disappointment, miss." "You sure?" She was sure. The train began to slow, brakes screaming. Evelyn's hands trembled as she gathered her single carpet bag. Worn leather, patched twice, containing everything she owned. 3 dresses, all mended. 1 pair of boots. A photograph of her mother she'd managed to hide from Marcus. And buried at the bottom, wrapped in a handkerchief, the $3 that represented her entire fortune. The platform at Red Hollow wasn't really a platform. More like a stretch of packed dirt with a tilted sign that read Red Hollow in peeling paint. 4 people got off the train, a traveling salesman with a sample case, an older woman clutching a hat box, a young boy being collected by his father, and Evelyn. She stepped down, and Texas heat hit her like a physical blow. Nothing like San Antonio's humid warmth. This was dry, relentless, the kind of heat that sucked moisture from your skin and left you feeling like old leather. There were maybe a dozen people waiting. Evelyn scanned their faces, looking for what? She didn't even know what C. Boone looked like. Could be any of them. The gray-haired man with the crooked teeth. The younger fellow with his hat pulled low. The Miss Mercer. The voice came from her left. Not a question, a statement. Evelyn turned. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with shoulders that suggested years of hard labor. His face was weathered, lines carved deep around his eyes and mouth, though he couldn't have been more than 35. Dark hair needed cutting, jaw needed shaving, eyes the color of storm clouds and just as warm. Those eyes traveled over her slowly, taking inventory like she was a horse he might buy. Evelyn lifted her chin, refusing to fidget under the inspection. "Mr. Boone?" "Caleb." He didn't offer his hand. "That all you brought?" He nodded at her pathetic carpet bag. "Yes." "You smaller than I expected." It wasn't quite an accusation, but close. Evelyn bristled. "Your advertisement didn't specify a height requirement." Something flickered across his face. Might have been amusement, might have been irritation, gone too quick to tell. "Wagons this way." He didn't help with her bag, just turned and started walking. Evelyn grabbed the handle and followed, practically jogging to keep up with his long strides. The wagon was exactly what she'd expected. Functional, beaten by weather, the wood dried and splintering. A single horse stood in the traces, brown and unremarkable, swishing flies with its tail. Caleb took her bag and tossed it in the back with about as much ceremony as if it were a sack of feed. Then he climbed up, still without offering assistance. Evelyn hoisted herself up, grateful she'd worn her practical dress instead of anything with excessive skirts. She settled on the hard bench seat, leaving a careful distance between them. Caleb clicked his tongue, and the horse started forward. They rode in silence. Red Hollow disappeared behind them within minutes, and then there was nothing. Just endless plains, scrub brush, the occasional skeletal tree reaching toward a merciless sky. The sun hammered down. Sweat pooled under Evelyn's collar. After 15 minutes, she tried conversation. "How far is your ranch?" "Hour." "Have you lived there long?" 10 years. "What kind of cattle do you buy?" "Not much for talking, Miss Mercer." Evelyn's jaw tightened. "It's just Evelyn." He said nothing. Another 10 minutes crawled by. The wagon wheels creaked. The horse plodded. Evelyn's dress stuck to her back. Finally, she couldn't stand it anymore. "Why did you place that advertisement?" Caleb's hands tightened slightly on the reins. For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. "Needed help. Ranch is too much for one person." "You could have hired hands." "Can't afford them." The bluntness shouldn't have stung. This was a practical arrangement after all, but somehow it did. "So you advertised for a wife instead?" "I advertised for a partner, not the same thing." "Seems like the same thing since we're getting married." "Marriage is just paper, makes it legal, keeps people from talking. Don't mean anything beyond that." Evelyn absorbed this. She should have been relieved. She'd escaped romance once, didn't need it forced on her again. But there was something almost insulting about his complete indifference. "What happened to your last partner?" she asked. Caleb's expression went carefully blank. "Didn't work out." "Why not?" "She left." 2 words, delivered flat. But Evelyn heard volumes in the silence after. "I'm not going to leave," she said. Caleb glanced at her then, really looked at her. Those storm cloud eyes searched her face. "Everyone says that." "I mean it. I've got nowhere else to go." It slipped out before she could stop it. More honesty than she'd intended. Caleb's gaze sharpened. "Someone after you?" "No." "You're lying." "I'm not." "Your hands are shaking. You keep looking back like you expect someone to be following, and you got a faded bruise on your cheek you tried to cover up." Evelyn's hand flew to her face. She'd thought the powder had hidden it completely. Caleb's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his posture. His voice came out quieter. "Husband?" "Stepfather. And the man he wants me to marry." "You know where you went?" "No, I didn't tell anyone. I just left." Caleb studied the horizon. When he spoke again, his tone was careful, measured. "Ranch is isolated. Nearest neighbor is 8 miles. Town is 12. Nobody comes out unless they have business. If you need to disappear, it's a good place for it." It wasn't sympathy exactly, but it wasn't nothing either. "Thank you," Evelyn said quietly. Caleb nodded once. They rode the rest of the way in silence, but it felt different now. Less hostile. More like 2 people who'd reached an understanding, however fragile. The Boone Ranch appeared suddenly, or what passed for suddenly in landscape this flat. First, the fence line, posts tilted at odd angles, wire sagging. Then the barn, roof missing shingles, walls weathered to gray. Finally, the house. It was small, single story, wood that had once been painted white, but now showed more bare grain than color. The porch sagged on one side. Several windows were dark, curtains drawn or missing. The whole place had the look of something slowly giving up. Caleb pulled the wagon to a stop in front. "Home," he said, with no particular emotion. Evelyn climbed down, her legs stiff from the ride. Up close, the house looked even worse, but she'd lived in worse. Marcus's house had been grand, but cold as a tomb and twice as suffocating. "I'll show you inside," Caleb said, already moving toward the door. The interior was sparse. Front room with a fireplace, ash cold. Kitchen with a cast-iron stove, a table, 2 chairs. A narrow hallway led to what Evelyn assumed were bedrooms. Everything was meticulously clean but worn threadbare. No decorations, no warmth, just function. Caleb stopped in front of a closed door. "This'll be your room. Mine's at the other end. Washroom's outside, back of the house. Pump's in the kitchen." He opened the door. The room was small but adequate. Iron bed frame, thin mattress, single blanket, a dresser missing one knob, a window that looked out over the endless plains. "It's fine," Evelyn said, and meant it. Caleb set her bag inside. "We'll go into town tomorrow. Get married at the courthouse. Judge Hendricks does it quick." "Tomorrow?" "No point waiting. Sooner it's legal. Sooner you can start working without people talking." Romance truly was dead. "All right," Evelyn agreed. Caleb moved toward the door, then paused. "I got rules." "I assumed you would." "I run the ranch my way. You don't question my decisions about stock, land, or money." Evelyn bristled. "I'm not a child." "Didn't say you were. But this place nearly broke me getting it stable. I'm not changing what works. And if I see something that could work better, then you mention it quiet-like, and I'll consider. But final call is mine." Those are the terms. You don't like them. I'll take you back to town tomorrow morning instead of the courthouse." They stared at each other. Evelyn thought about Marcus, about Horace Drummond's damp hands and wet smile, about being property instead of person. "Fine," she said. "Your ranch, your rules." Caleb's shoulders relaxed slightly. "I'll expect you to handle the house. Cooking, cleaning, mending, garden if you're capable. I'll handle everything outside." "I can do that." "And this arrangement, it's practical only. I'm not looking for companionship." The way he said it, like even the word tasted bitter, made something twist in Evelyn's chest. "Neither am I," she lied. Caleb nodded. "I'll leave you to settle in. There's beans and bacon in the kitchen if you're hungry. I've got work to finish before dark." He left, boots heavy on the wooden floor, screen door banging shut behind him. Evelyn stood alone in her new room, her new life, and tried to figure out if she'd made a terrible mistake. She moved to the window, watched Caleb stride toward the barn, all sharp angles and rigid control. A man who'd clearly been hurt and decided never to risk it again. A man who'd reduced marriage to a business transaction, which was fine, perfect even. That's exactly what she needed. So why did it feel so desperately lonely? The next morning arrived cold and gray, threatening rain that wouldn't come. Evelyn woke to silence. No sounds from elsewhere in the house. She dressed quickly in her least worn dress, pale blue cotton, mended carefully at the hem, and braided her dark hair. The mirror above the dresser was so old the silver had worn away in spots, giving her reflection a ghostly, incomplete quality. In the kitchen, she found evidence of Caleb's breakfast. A single plate washed and drying by the sink, coffee grounds still in the pot. She poured herself what remained, lukewarm and bitter, and tried to settle her nerves. Today she was getting married, to a stranger, who didn't want her as anything except unpaid labor. Still better than Horace Drummond, she reminded herself. Caleb appeared around 8, cleaner than yesterday but still rough around the edges. He'd shaved at least, revealing a strong jaw and a thin scar near his left ear, changed into what must have been his only good shirt, brown, pressed but faded. "Ready?" he asked. "Yes." The ride into town was a repeat of yesterday's silence, except tighter somehow, more weighted. Evelyn kept her hands folded in her lap to hide their trembling. Red Hollow looked even smaller in daylight. Main Street consisted of maybe 8 buildings: general store, saloon, church, bank, courthouse, hotel, doctor's office, and a building with a sign too faded to read. A handful of people moved about their business, several stopping to stare openly at Caleb's wagon. He pulled up in front of the courthouse, a squat brick building that looked like it was permanently scowling. "People will talk," he said, not looking at her. "Town this size, they got nothing better to do. Ignore them." "I'm used to people talking." "Good." Inside, the courthouse smelled like old paper and lemon oil. A clerk at the front desk, middle-aged woman with spectacles on a chain, looked up and immediately straightened. "Caleb Boone, been a while." "Mrs. Patterson, need to see Judge Hendricks." Her eyes shifted to Evelyn, sharp with curiosity. "This about what I think it's about? Is he available?" Mrs. Patterson pursed her lips, clearly annoyed at being denied gossip, but stood and disappeared through a side door. Evelyn waited, acutely aware of her worn dress, her cheap boots, the fact that she was about to marry a man she'd known for less than 24 hours. "Caleb?" The voice belonged to a man emerging from the same side door, late 60s, gray beard neatly trimmed, wearing a vest despite the heat. Judge Hendricks, presumably. "Judge." Caleb removed his hat. "Need a marriage license drawn up and witnessed." The judge's eyebrows rose slightly. "That's so." He looked at Evelyn. "And you are?" "Evelyn Mercer." "Miss Mercer here understands the terms," Caleb added. "We've discussed it. It's a practical arrangement." "I see." The judge's expression suggested he'd seen this before and didn't approve. "Miss Mercer, you're certain? You understand marriage in Texas is legally binding?" "I understand." "And you're entering this of your own free will? No one's forcing you?" Evelyn thought about Marcus's hands on her jaw. Horace Drummond's collection of wives. "No one's forcing me," she said firmly. The judge studied her a moment longer, then sighed. "All right then, come into my office. We'll need 2 witnesses." "Mrs. Patterson," he called. "Find me Samuel and bring him in." 20 minutes later, Evelyn Mercer became Evelyn Boone. The ceremony was brutally efficient. No vows beyond "I do," no rings, no kiss, just signatures on paper, hers still shaky, Caleb's bold and angular, and the judge's official stamp. "Congratulations," Judge Hendricks said, sounding like he was offering condolences instead. Caleb paid the fee, $2, and turned to leave. "Wait," Evelyn said. He stopped. She'd just married this man. Shouldn't there be something? Some acknowledgement that their lives had just permanently tangled together? But Caleb's expression remained closed, distant. "We should get back," he said. "Fence in the north pasture needs repair before it falls completely." "Right." "Of course." They returned to the wagon, to silence, to the ranch. Evelyn kept her left hand in her lap, studying the bare finger where a ring should have been. Mrs. Boone. She'd changed her name, her legal status, her entire future, and somehow felt exactly the same as she had this morning, except lonelier. That first week passed in a blur of work. Evelyn had claimed she could handle domestic duties, and she'd meant it, but the scope of neglect was staggering. The house had been cleaned regularly but superficially. Beneath the surface, everything was falling apart. Cupboards held mismatched dishes, half of them chipped. The pantry organization made no sense. Beans mixed with tools, preserves next to ammunition. The stove worked but smoked badly, needing a thorough cleaning. Every window was filmed with dust. The floors were scarred and splintering. Evelyn worked methodically. Up before dawn. Coffee first, learning to make it strong the way Caleb preferred. Then breakfast. Eggs when the chickens cooperated. Bacon or salt pork. Biscuits from a recipe she'd memorized years ago. Caleb ate in silence, nodded once in what might have been appreciation or acknowledgement, then disappeared into the endless work of keeping the ranch alive. After breakfast, Evelyn cleaned, reorganized, mended curtains, patched holes in the porch screen, attacked the stove with determination until it stopped smoking, created order from chaos, room by room. She rarely saw Caleb during daylight. He was always somewhere else, mending fence, checking cattle, repairing the barn roof, dealing with some crisis she only learned about through its aftermath. Mud on the floor, torn clothing left by the washroom, tools appearing in odd places. Dinner was the only time they occupied the same space for more than 5 minutes. Evelyn cooked, Caleb ate. They didn't talk. Well, that wasn't entirely true. Pass the salt. More coffee? Rain's coming tomorrow. Conversations, if you could call them that, never exceeded 10 words. By the end of the week, Evelyn felt like a ghost haunting someone else's life. She existed, she worked, but she barely felt real. Friday evening, she made stew, beef from the ranch, vegetables from the struggling garden she'd discovered behind the house, thickened with flour and seasoned carefully. It was good. She knew it was good. Caleb ate 3 bowls without comment. When he finally pushed back from the table, Evelyn spoke before she could lose her nerve. "Did you like it?" He paused, halfway to standing. "Like what?" "The stew. Was it all right?" "It was fine." "Just fine?" Caleb's brow furrowed like he couldn't figure out why this mattered. "It was good. Better than I cook." "That's not saying much, is it?" Something flickered in his expression, almost amusement. "No, I suppose it's not." He carried his bowl to the sink, rinsed it, he always cleaned his own dishes, she'd noticed, and moved toward the door. "Caleb?" He stopped but didn't turn around. "Do you always eat like that?" "Like what?" "Like you're alone." Now he turned, studied her with those storm cloud eyes. "I am alone, usually. But I'm here now." "You're here to work, not to—" He gestured vaguely. "Make conversation." "Would it kill you to try?" "Might." "That's not funny." "Wasn't joking." They stared at each other. Evelyn felt frustration building in her chest, hot and sharp. "I've been here a week," she said carefully. "I've cleaned your house, cooked your meals, mended your clothes. The least you could do is acknowledge I exist." Caleb's jaw tightened. "I never asked for companionship." "I'm not asking for companionship. I'm asking for basic human decency." "You want decency?" "Fine. The stew was excellent. Best I've had in years. House looks better than it has since—" He stopped abruptly. "Since she left?" Evelyn finished quietly. Caleb's expression went hard. "Don't." "Don't what?" "Mention that someone else existed before me? That you're comparing me to her, whether you admit it or not?" "You don't know anything about it." "Only because you won't tell me. Because it's none of your business." "I'm your wife." "On paper, that's all." The words landed like a slap. Evelyn felt her eyes sting and hated herself for it. She'd known the terms, agreed to them. She had no right to feel hurt, but she did anyway. "You're right," she said, voice carefully level. "I apologize for overstepping." She turned back to the dishes, back rigid, fighting to keep her hands steady. Behind her, Caleb didn't move for a long moment. Then his boots sounded on the floor. The screen door opened, closed. He was gone. Evelyn exhaled shakily, bracing her hands on the edge of the sink. This was fine. This was what she'd signed up for. Practical arrangement. No expectations. So why did she feel like she'd just lost something she'd never actually had? That night, Evelyn couldn't sleep. She lay in the narrow bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle. Wind rattled the windows. Somewhere outside, a coyote called. Lonely, searching. She thought about San Antonio, about Marcus and his threats, about Horace Drummond's wet smile. Then she thought about this house, this silent, emotionally barren house that somehow still felt safer than anywhere she'd been in years. Caleb Boone was cold, distant, possibly incapable of normal human connection. But he hadn't hurt her, hadn't threatened her, hadn't touched her at all, actually, except for that one moment during the ceremony when the judge insisted they at least clasp hands. His palm had been rough, calloused from years of ranch work, but warm, solid, real. Evelyn rolled onto her side, tucking her hands under her cheek. Through the thin wall, she could hear nothing from Caleb's room. Either he was already asleep or he moved silently. She wondered if he ever felt lonely. Probably not. People like Caleb, people who'd been hurt badly enough, learned to prefer isolation, safer that way. No risk of being abandoned again if you never let anyone close in the first place. Evelyn understood that more than she'd ever admit. She just started to drift off when she heard it. A faint sound from somewhere in the house. Not Caleb, something else. Scratching. She sat up, heart suddenly pounding. Mice? The house was old enough. The sound came again, more insistent. From the kitchen. Evelyn grabbed her shawl and crept into the hallway. Moonlight filtered through the windows, casting everything in silver and shadow. The kitchen was empty, but the scratching continued. The back door. Someone, or something, was trying to get in. Evelyn's mouth went dry. She looked around for a weapon, grabbed a heavy iron skillet, and approached the door carefully. "Who's there?" she called out, voice shakier than she wanted. The scratching stopped. Then, "Ma'am?" A man's voice, young, uncertain. "Who are you?" Evelyn demanded. "Danny Cooper, ma'am. I work for Mr. Boone. I'm sorry to bother you so late, but one of the cattle got through the fence, and I can't find Mr. Boone, and I thought—" Evelyn yanked open the door. A kid stood there. Couldn't be more than 16, gangly and nervous, hat in his hands. He looked shocked to see her. You're Caleb's wife?" "I am. Where is he?" "Don't know, ma'am. Check the barn, the bunkhouse. The north pasture fence is down and there's at least 3 head loose. If they get much further, we'll lose them in the dark." Evelyn's mind raced. Caleb hadn't mentioned hiring anyone, but this boy clearly knew the property. "How long have you worked here?" "Just started last week, ma'am. Mr. Boone hired me to help with the fence work." So Caleb had hired help. Interesting that he hadn't mentioned it. "Show me where the fence is down," Evelyn said. Danny's eyes widened. "Ma'am, I should probably wait for— Mr. Boone is clearly elsewhere. Those cattle won't wait. Show me." "But that's not a request." Danny swallowed, nodded, and led her outside. The north pasture was a 20-minute walk in the dark. Evelyn followed Danny's lantern, her worn boots slipping on loose rocks. The temperature had dropped, and her shawl wasn't nearly warm enough. When they reached the fence, the damage was immediately obvious. A whole section had collapsed, posts tilted, wire tangled on the ground. And beyond it, in the darkness, she could hear cattle lowing nervously. "We need to get them back before they scatter completely," Danny said. "But I can't do it alone. And without Mr. Boone, then we'll do it together." "Ma'am, you can't—" "Watch me." For the next hour, Evelyn learned exactly how little she knew about cattle. They were stubborn, easily spooked, and seemingly determined to go anywhere except where she wanted them. But slowly, with Danny calling directions and Evelyn blocking escape routes, they managed to herd the 3 strays back toward the broken fence. By the time they finished, Evelyn was covered in mud, her dress torn, her hands scraped raw from handling fence wire. But the cattle were contained. "We should patch this temporarily," Danny said, examining the damage. "Won't hold long, but it'll last till morning." They worked together, restringing wire, bracing the weakest posts. It was sloppy work, but functional. When they finished, Danny looked at her with something like respect. "You're tougher than you look, Mrs. Boone." "Don't sound so surprised," he grinned. "Yes, ma'am." They walked back to the house in companionable silence. When they reached the porch, Danny tipped his hat. "I'll come back at first light to fix it properly. And I'll find Mr. Boone, let him know what happened." "Thank you, Danny." He left, lantern swinging. Evelyn went inside, exhausted and filthy. She managed to wash the worst of the mud off before collapsing into bed. Sleep claimed her immediately. Shot. She woke to voices. Sunlight streamed through the window, late morning judging by the angle. Evelyn sat up, disoriented. She never slept this late. The voices were coming from the kitchen. One was Danny, the other, Caleb. Evelyn dressed quickly and emerged to find them both at the table. Caleb looked up when she entered, his expression unreadable. "You should have woken me," she said, embarrassed. "Danny said you were up half the night fixing fence." It wasn't quite accusatory, but close. The fence was down, the cattle were loose. What else was I supposed to do? "Wait for me." "We didn't know where you were." Caleb's jaw tightened. "I was checking the water pump at the south well. It's been acting up." "How was I supposed to know that?" "You weren't, which is why you should have waited." Evelyn's temper flared. "So I should have just let 3 head of cattle disappear into the dark? I should have been told there was a problem. Danny tried to find you, and when he couldn't, the next step was to wait, not go stumbling around in the dark doing work you don't know how to do. I managed fine. You got lucky. I got the job done." They glared at each other. Danny shifted uncomfortably, clearly wishing he were anywhere else. Caleb spoke first, his voice forcibly calm. "The fence work was adequate, but you had no business being out there alone at night." "I wasn't alone. Danny was with me." Danny's 16 and has been here a week. He doesn't know enough to keep you safe. Safe from what? Cows? From a dozen things that could kill you on a ranch at night. The genuine concern beneath the anger caught her off guard. I didn't realize you cared, she said quietly. Something flickered across Caleb's face. He looked away. I care about not losing a worker, he said gruffly. Hard enough to find someone willing to stay out here. The moment broke. Evelyn felt something inside her harden. Of course, she said. How practical of you. She moved past him to the stove, started preparing breakfast with sharp, angry movements. Behind her, Caleb stood. Danny, go check the east fence line. Make sure last night's wind didn't damage anything else. Yes, sir. The boy fled. Silence filled the kitchen except for the clatter of Evelyn's cooking. You're angry, Caleb said finally. Very observant. I was trying to, Trying to what? Remind me that I'm just an employee? Mission accomplished. That's not, isn't it? She turned to face him. You made it very clear what this arrangement is, Caleb. Practical, no expectations. I'm just the person who cooks and cleans. Fine, but don't pretend you were worried about me last night. Worry requires actually caring about someone. Caleb's expression went carefully blank again. That wall slamming down. You're right, he said flatly. I apologize for the confusion. He left. Evelyn stared at the empty doorway, shaking with frustration and something deeper that she refused to name. This was impossible. How was she supposed to live like this? Working beside someone who treated her like furniture with a pulse? She finished making breakfast that no one would eat, then did the dishes with movement so forceful she nearly broke a plate. Fine. If Caleb wanted practical, she'd give him practical. She spent the rest of the day working with focused intensity, finished reorganizing the pantry, cleaned every window until they sparkled, pulled weeds from the garden with vicious efficiency. Caleb stayed outside. She saw him occasionally working on some project near the barn. They didn't speak. Dinner was beans and cornbread, simple, functional, exactly what you'd expect from an employee. Caleb ate in silence. Afterward, Evelyn cleaned up and went to her room. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at nothing, feeling the weight of the day settle on her shoulders. This was her life now, this silence, this distance. She'd escaped Marcus and Horace, but she'd traded one kind of misery for another. At least this kind didn't leave bruises. Small comfort. Through the wall, she heard Caleb moving around in his room. The floor creaked. A drawer opened and closed. Two people living in the same house, separated by a few feet of wall in an ocean of hurt neither would acknowledge. Evelyn lay down, pulled the thin blanket over herself, and watched shadows move across the ceiling. Tomorrow would be the same, and the day after, and the day after that. This was her future. She'd better get used to it. Boscht. 3 more weeks passed in the same pattern. Work. Silence. Meals eaten together, but alone. 2 people circling each other like planets in separate orbits, never quite colliding. Evelyn fell into the rhythm of ranch life despite herself. Wake before dawn. Start coffee. Make breakfast. Clean. Mend. Cook. Clean again. Collapse into bed exhausted. The work was endless, but it had a certain honesty to it. Unlike San Antonio's suffocating social rules, here the equation was simple. Work equaled results. She could see the difference she was making, the house slowly transforming, the garden beginning to produce, meals improving. Caleb acknowledged none of it. Oh, he didn't complain, but he didn't comment either. Just ate what she cooked, lived in the spaces she cleaned, wore the clothes she mended, and remained as emotionally accessible as the horizon. Danny became her only source of conversation. The kid came by most days, always polite, always willing to explain ranch things when she asked. He'd mentioned his own family, father who drank, mother who'd died, 5 younger siblings he helped support. Working for Caleb was his first real job. He's tough but fair, Danny told her one afternoon while she fed the chickens. Pays what he promises, doesn't yell, doesn't hit. That's more than most. The bar is remarkably low, Evelyn observed. Danny grinned. Yes, ma'am. But out here, you take what you can get. She thought about that later. Taking what you can get. Wasn't that what she was doing? She'd run from one bad situation straight into another type of emptiness. Except Except sometimes she caught Caleb watching her. Quick glances when he thought she wasn't looking. His expression unreadable, but attentive. And small things kept appearing. Fresh water outside her bedroom door every morning before she woke. The broken hinge on the pantry door fixed overnight. Her riding saddle, which she'd mentioned to Danny was rubbing her wrong, mysteriously repaired with new stitching. Caleb never mentioned these things. Never took credit. But who else could it be? It was confusing. Maddening. He gave her nothing in words, but these tiny gestures whispered something different. One evening, Evelyn decided to test the theory. She'd made apple pie from fruit she'd found at the general store. Expensive, but she'd used some of the small household budget Caleb had given her. It was her mother's recipe, one of the few things she remembered clearly from before everything fell apart. She served it after dinner without comment. Caleb took a bite, then stopped. "This is—" He paused, seeming to struggle for words. "Terrible?" Evelyn offered. "No, it's good. Really good. Thank you." He took another bite, then another, finished the whole slice, which for Caleb was practically enthusiasm. "Your mother's recipe?" he asked. Evelyn froze. "How did you know?" "You got the same look on your face my mother used to get when she made her blackberry cobbler, like you were somewhere else." It was the most personal thing he'd ever said to her. "Yes," she admitted softly. "My mother taught me before she died." Caleb nodded slowly. She'd be proud. This is perfect. Then he stood, carried his plate to the sink, and left. Evelyn sat alone with the rest of the pie, something warm and painful expanding in her chest. He'd noticed, understood, offered exactly the right words, then immediately retreated. It was like trying to befriend a wild animal. 1 step forward, 3 steps back. Progress measured in moments so small you could barely see them. But they were there. That night, Evelyn made a decision. She couldn't keep living in this limbo. Either she gave up on any possibility of connection, accepted the practical arrangement exactly as defined, or she tried to bridge the gap between them. The safe choice was obvious: accept the situation, stop hoping for more. But Evelyn had never been particularly good at safe choices. If she had been, she'd have married Horace Drummond and lived a comfortable, miserable life. Instead, she was here, on a failing ranch in the middle of nowhere with a man who couldn't or wouldn't let anyone past his defenses. But he'd noticed the pie. Understood what it meant. That had to count for something. Tomorrow, she decided, she'd try again. And the day after that. And the day after that. However long it took. Because the alternative, this lonely, silent existence, was its own kind of dying. And Evelyn had come too far to just give up. Even if Caleb Boone was the most stubborn, emotionally constipated man in all of Texas. Maybe especially because of that. The breaking point came on a Tuesday, exactly 5 weeks after Evelyn had arrived. She'd spent the morning reorganizing the supply shed, a disaster of epic proportions where nails lived next to preserves and rope tangled with spare harness leather. It made no sense, wasted time every time Caleb needed something, and drove her absolutely crazy. So she fixed it. Tools on one wall, sorted by type, hardware in labeled containers. Leather goods hung properly. Supplies arranged by frequency of use. It took her 4 hours, but when she finished, the shed actually functioned like a shed instead of a junk heap. She was dusting off her hands, rather proud of herself, when Caleb appeared in the doorway. His face went from neutral to thunderous in about 2 seconds. "What did you do?" Evelyn blinked. "I organized it. Now you can actually find—" "I didn't ask you to do this. It needed doing. I had a system. Your system was chaos." "My chaos," Caleb said, voice tight. "I knew where everything was. You spent 20 minutes yesterday looking for fence pliers. And I found them. Because I told you where they were after I'd already reorganized the toolbox." Caleb stepped into the shed, looking around like she'd burned the place down instead of making it functional. "Change it back," he said. Evelyn stared at him. "You can't be serious? Change it back." "No." His eyes snapped to hers. "What did you say?" "I said no." Evelyn crossed her arms. "This is better, more efficient, saves time. And I'm not wasting another 4 hours putting your mess back together just because you're too stubborn to admit improvement when you see it. I don't recall asking for your opinion on how I run my property. And I don't recall signing up to work for a tyrant who can't handle basic organizational logic." The air between them crackled. Caleb's jaw worked. You agreed to my terms, my ranch, my decisions. About stock and land, yes. This is a supply shed. Everything on this ranch is mine to decide about. That's insane. That's the agreement. Then maybe the agreement is stupid. The words hung there, too loud in the small space. Caleb's expression went dangerously calm. If you're not happy with the arrangement, there's a train to San Antonio every Thursday. It was a low blow and he knew it. Evelyn felt something crack inside her chest. 5 weeks. 5 weeks of trying, of reaching out in small ways, of hoping that maybe beneath all that ice there was something human. And here he was, threatening to send her back to Marcus, like she was a defective purchase he could return. Fine, she said, voice shaking. You want your chaos? Keep it. I'll stay in the house where I apparently belong. She tried to push past him. He caught her arm. Evelyn. She yanked free. Don't touch me. I didn't mean... Yes, you did. You meant exactly what you said. I'm here on sufferance, and the second I step out of line, you'll ship me back to whatever hell I ran from. Well, congratulations, Caleb. You've made your point perfectly clear. She stormed out before he could see the tears starting. Made it all the way to the house, through the kitchen, into her room before they spilled over. She pressed her hands over her mouth, trying to muffle the sound, hating herself for crying, hating him for making her care enough to be hurt. Practical arrangement. That's all this was. She'd just been stupid enough to forget. An hour later, there was a knock on her door. Evelyn had pulled herself together by then, washed her face, rebuilt her composure brick by brick. She opened the door expecting Caleb. It was Danny, hat literally in his hands, looking miserable. Mrs. Boone, I'm real sorry to bother you, but Mr. Boone said to tell you he's riding out to check the south fence line, and won't be back till after dark. He said there's leftover stew in the pot if you're hungry, and... Danny hesitated. And what? And he's sorry about earlier. He knows he was wrong. Evelyn's eyebrows rose. He said that. Not in those exact words, ma'am. He mostly just glared at the horizon and told me to make sure you knew he wouldn't be at dinner. But I've worked for him long enough to know when he's feeling bad about something. He gets real quiet and mean to fence posts. Despite everything, Evelyn almost smiled. Mean to fence posts? Yes, ma'am. Hammers them extra hard. Real aggressive-like. I see. Danny shifted his weight. For what it's worth, the supply shed looks real good. Makes my job a lot easier. I told him so, but he just grunted at me. Thank you, Danny. Yes, ma'am. I'll just go now. He fled. Evelyn closed the door and leaned against it. Caleb was sorry, or as close to sorry as a man like him could get, which apparently meant hiding at the south fence line and abusing fence posts instead of apologizing like a normal human being. She should have been angrier, should have held on to her righteous fury, but instead, she just felt tired. That evening, Evelyn ate stew alone at the table, watching the sun set through the kitchen window. The house felt bigger somehow when she knew Caleb wasn't just in another room but actually gone. She hated that she noticed, hated that she'd gotten used to his presence even when he wasn't talking. The sound of his boots on the porch, the smell of coffee he'd made before dawn, the way he always washed his own dishes, careful and precise, like it mattered. Small things. Meaningless things. Except they weren't meaningless, and that was the problem. Evelyn cleaned up, banked the fire in the stove, and went to bed. She woke sometime deep in the night to the sound of the front door opening. Caleb, finally back. She heard him move through the house, heard water running in the kitchen, washing up, probably. Then his bedroom door closed. Silence. Evelyn stared at the ceiling, wide awake now. Tomorrow they'd go back to their careful dance. Polite distance. Minimal words. The supply shed would stay organized because Caleb was practical enough to recognize efficiency even if he'd never admit it. And neither of them would mention the fight. This was fine. This was sustainable. This was absolutely miserable. Evelyn rolled over, pulled the blanket up to her chin, and tried to convince herself that loneliness was a fair price for safety. She was still trying when she finally fell asleep an hour before dawn. The next week brought an unexpected change. Caleb started talking. Not much. Not about anything important, but small comments here and there that suggested he was making an actual effort. Coffee's good this morning. Danny said the chickens are laying better since you fixed their coop. Storm coming tomorrow. Might want to bring in extra firewood. Evelyn responded carefully, not wanting to spook this fragile progress. Thank you. He's right. I added fresh straw. I'll do that after breakfast. It wasn't exactly stimulating conversation, but it was something. The supply shed remained organized. Caleb never acknowledged it directly, but she noticed him using the new system without complaint. Small victory. More interesting were the gestures that continued despite, or maybe because of, their fight. Her window, which had been sticking, suddenly opened smoothly. The wobbly table leg got fixed. A pair of work gloves appeared on the porch rail, sized for her hands, quality leather. And one morning, Evelyn found a bundle of wildflowers in a jar outside her door. They were scraggly things, definitely picked by someone with no experience in flower arranging. Half were already wilting. But they were there, and there was only one person who could have left them. Evelyn brought them inside, put them on the kitchen table, and didn't say a word about it. That evening, Caleb glanced at the flowers exactly once. His ears went slightly red. They ate dinner in silence, but it felt different somehow. Less empty. After he left, Evelyn touched one of the wilted petals gently. The man was infuriating, emotionally stunted, incapable of just using his words like a normal person. But he was trying. In his own broken, backwards way, he was trying. It was something. 2 days later, Caleb taught her to ride properly. It started because Evelyn mentioned needing supplies from town and not wanting to wait for him to have time to make the trip. "You can't ride well enough," Caleb said. "Not for 12 miles each way." "I can ride fine." "You can sit on a horse without falling off." "That's not the same as riding." "Then teach me." He looked surprised, like he'd expected her to argue. "Now?" he asked. "Unless you're too busy being mean to fence posts." His mouth twitched. Might have been a smile. Hard to tell. "Get your hat. Sun's brutal this time of day." They went to the corral where 3 horses stood in the shade. The brown one from the wagon, a gray mare with kind eyes, and a black gelding that looked like it had opinions about everything. Caleb brought out the gray. "This is Dolly. She's patient. Won't spook easy. Good horse to learn on." He saddled her while explaining each step. Evelyn paid attention, watching his hands work with casual expertise. "Now mount up," he said. Evelyn grabbed the saddle horn, stuck her foot in the stirrup, and hauled herself up with more determination than grace. "Good. Now, I know how to sit, Caleb. I'm not completely incompetent." "Didn't say you were. But there's sitting and there's riding. You want to learn or not?" Evelyn swallowed her pride. "I want to learn." For the next hour, Caleb taught her how to hold the reins properly, how to use her legs to guide instead of just yanking the horse's head around, how to move with the animal instead of against it. He was patient, surprisingly good at explaining, and when she made mistakes, he corrected without judgment. "Loosen your shoulders. You're tense. Don't pull back so hard. She'll stop fine with gentle pressure." "Better, you're getting it." By the end, Evelyn could walk Dolly around the corral with something resembling competence, and even managed a slow trot without bouncing around like a sack of potatoes. Caleb watched from the fence, arms crossed, expression unreadable. "You'll do," he said finally. "Practice every day for a week. Then we'll try a short ride out to the creek. If that goes well, town after that." "Thank you." He nodded, moved to take Dolly's reins. Their hands brushed. Both of them froze. It was nothing. Barely contact. But Evelyn felt it like a shock up her arm, and from the way Caleb went absolutely still, he'd felt it too. He pulled back first. "I'll untack her. You should go inside. You got sun on your face." He wasn't wrong. Her cheeks felt hot, but she suspected it wasn't entirely from the sun. "Right. Yes, I'll just—" She fled. In the kitchen, she pressed her hands to her cheeks, feeling ridiculous. It was an accidental touch, meaningless. The kind of thing that happened a dozen times a day between normal people. But nothing about their relationship was normal, and that brief moment of contact had felt more intimate than her entire engagement to Horace Drummond. Evelyn grabbed a glass of water, drank it too fast, and tried to get her thoughts under control. This was dangerous territory. She had agreed to a practical arrangement, started developing actual feelings for her emotionally unavailable husband was not part of the plan. Except maybe it was too late for warnings. Maybe it had been too late since the moment he'd left those scraggly wildflowers outside her door. That evening, Caleb came in for dinner looking like he'd been working hard. His shirt was stained with sweat, sleeves rolled up to reveal corded forearms. He washed up at the pump, dried his hands, and sat down without meeting her eyes. Evelyn served chicken and dumplings, another of her mother's recipes. Comfort food. The kind that required patience and care to make properly. Caleb took a bite, stopped, took another. "This is good?" Evelyn offered. "Yeah." He looked up then, met her eyes. "Real good. Thank you for making it." "You're welcome." They ate in silence, but again, it felt different. Caleb kept glancing at her like he wanted to say something but couldn't figure out how. Finally, he cleared his throat. "About the other day, the supply shed." Evelyn waited. "You were right. It's better organized, makes work easier." He paused. "I was being stubborn." Coming from Caleb, this was basically a full apology complete with flowers and a brass band. "Thank you," Evelyn said carefully. "I know change is hard." "It's not the change, it's—" He stopped, jaw working. "She used to do that, Margaret, the woman who was here before. She'd reorganize things, rearrange the house. And for a while it was nice, made the place feel lived in. But then she left anyway, and everything she'd changed just reminded me she was gone." Evelyn's chest tightened. "Margaret was your wife?" "Yeah, for 3 years. Met her in town, thought she was different. Brought her out here, and for a while things were good. But ranch life was harder than she expected, lonelier. When my cattle got sick and I lost half the herd, we almost went under. She didn't want to wait around to see if I'd recover. She just left. One morning I woke up and she was gone. Took her things, took the wagon, took what money we had saved, left a note saying she couldn't do it anymore." His voice was flat, but pain lived underneath. "I don't blame her. This life isn't for everyone. That's why you advertised for a practical arrangement. No expectations. No risk of being hurt again." "Yeah, no." He met her eyes. "I know it's not fair to you. You didn't do anything wrong. But when I see things changing, part of me just—" He gestured vaguely. "Panics that I'll leave too?" Something like that. Evelyn sat with this information, understanding clicking into place. The coldness wasn't natural to him. It was armor. Every wall he'd built, every emotional distance he maintained was protection against being abandoned again. "I'm not Margaret," she said quietly. "I know that. Do you? Because you keep treating me like I'm about to disappear." Caleb's hands tightened around his fork. "I'm trying not to." "I know, and I appreciate it. But Caleb, I need you to understand something." She waited until he looked at her. "I ran from San Antonio with $3 and a newspaper clipping because going back meant marrying a man who would have owned me. I didn't come here because I had better options. I came here because this was my only option. And yes, it's been hard. And yes, you drive me absolutely crazy sometimes, but I'm not leaving. You say that now. I say that now, and I'll say it in 6 months and a year from now. I made a commitment. I keep my commitments. Even when the other person is difficult? Especially then." She managed a small smile. "I didn't marry you expecting easy, Caleb. I married you expecting honest work and a place where Marcus Bellamy's reach couldn't find me. Everything else is extra." He absorbed this silently. Then, "The flowers were stupid." Evelyn blinked at the sudden change of subject. "What?" "This morning, the flowers. They were half dead by the time I brought them in. I should have—" "They were perfect." Caleb looked skeptical. "I mean it," Evelyn insisted. "Do you know how long it's been since anyone gave me flowers? Even sad, wilted ones?" "Can't have been that long. You're—" He stopped himself. "I'm what?" His ears went red again. "Nothing. Eat your dinner before it gets cold." "Caleb Boone, finish that sentence." "No." "You can't just—" "I said no." But he was almost smiling, and Evelyn felt something warm bloom in her chest. They finished dinner with scattered conversation, real conversation, about Danny's progress, the gray mare's temperament, whether they needed to buy more chicken feed. Small things, normal things. When Caleb stood to leave, he paused at the door. "Same time tomorrow for writing practice?" "I'll be there." He nodded and left. Evelyn sat alone at the table, looking at the wilted wildflowers, and thought that maybe, just maybe, they were going to be all right. Over the next 2 weeks, something shifted between them. Caleb still wasn't chatty, probably never would be, but he started sharing small pieces of information about his day. Mentioned that the north pasture needed rotating, pointed out a hawk's nest he'd found, told her about the first time he tried to break a horse and ended up in the water trough. In return, Evelyn shared her own stories, carefully edited versions of her childhood, funny incidents from her brief time working in a dress shop, her mother's terrible singing voice that somehow made songs better instead of worse. They fell into an easier rhythm. Mornings started with coffee together before Caleb headed out. Evenings ended with dinner and conversation that sometimes lasted an hour or more. The riding lessons continued. Evelyn progressed from walking to trotting to a careful canter. Caleb was demanding but encouraging, and she found herself actually enjoying it. "You're a natural," he told her one afternoon as she brought Dolly to a smooth stop. "Liar. I almost fell off yesterday." "But you didn't. That's what matters." "You would have caught me if I had." "Maybe." "Caleb." "All right, yes. I would have caught you." Their eyes met and held. Something hung in the air between them. Wordless, fragile, important. Caleb looked away first. "Let's head back. Storm's coming." He was right. Dark clouds were building on the horizon, moving fast. They rode back in comfortable silence, but Evelyn kept stealing glances at him. The strong line of his jaw, the way he sat his horse like he'd been born to it, the careful way he watched the landscape, always alert, always aware. He'd been hurt badly, learned to protect himself by keeping everyone at arm's length, but the walls were coming down. Slowly, painfully, but definitely down. That night, the storm hit. Evelyn was in the kitchen cleaning up from dinner when the first drop started. Within minutes, it was a downpour. Wind howled around the house, rattling windows. Lightning split the sky. Caleb appeared in the doorway, soaked to the skin. "North fence is down. Saw it on my way back from the barn. If I don't fix it tonight, we'll lose cattle." "I'll help." "No, too dangerous. Caleb, you can't do it alone in this." "I've done it before." "That doesn't mean you should have to do it now." They stared at each other. Lightning flashed, throwing harsh shadows across his face. "I can't ask you to—" "You're not asking. I'm volunteering. Now let's go before it gets worse." She grabbed her coat, inadequate for this weather, but better than nothing, and followed him into the storm. The rain hit like a physical assault, cold, driving, soaking her instantly. The wind tried to knock her sideways. Evelyn grabbed Caleb's arm for balance, and he steadied her automatically. "Stay close!" he shouted over the wind. They made their way to the north pasture, fighting for every step. By the time they reached the fence, Evelyn was shaking from cold and exertion. The damage was worse than she'd expected. An entire section had collapsed, posts pulled from the ground, wire tangled and torn. Beyond it, she could hear cattle lowing nervously, moving too close to the break. "We need to get them back first," Caleb yelled, "then patch the fence." For the next hour, they worked in brutal conditions, herding frightened cattle away from the break, wrestling with posts that kept sliding in mud, stringing wire with numb fingers that could barely grip. Twice, Evelyn slipped. Twice, Caleb caught her. The second time, his hand stayed on her arms a moment longer than necessary. "You all right?" he shouted. "Fine, keep going." They worked side by side, matching each other's movements. When Evelyn struggled with a post, Caleb was there. When Caleb needed wire cut, Evelyn already had the tools. It wasn't smooth or easy. They were fighting the storm, the mud, the dark, their own exhaustion. But they were fighting together. Finally, impossibly, the fence held. Not pretty, not permanent, but functional enough to last till morning. Caleb tested it one more time, then turned to Evelyn. She was covered in mud, hair plastered to her head, shaking from cold. But she'd stayed, fought beside him for hours without complaint. Something cracked in his chest. "Let's get back," he said roughly. The walk to the house felt longer than the walk out. Evelyn's legs were shaking. Her coat was so waterlogged it weighed 10 pounds. But she kept going, Caleb's hand occasionally steadying her when she stumbled. Inside, they stood dripping on the kitchen floor. "You need to get out of those wet clothes," Caleb said. "I'll start a fire." Evelyn nodded numbly and made her way to her room. Getting undressed with frozen fingers was an ordeal. She managed eventually, wrapped herself in the blanket from her bed, and returned to the kitchen where Caleb had already coaxed flames from the stove. He'd changed into dry clothes and was making coffee. "Sit," he ordered. Evelyn sat. He handed her a cup of steaming coffee, so hot it almost burned her hands. She wrapped them around it gratefully. Caleb sat across from her, his own cup untouched. "You didn't have to do that," he said. "Yes, I did." "Evelyn, I'm not Margaret." The words came out sharper than she intended. "I don't know how many times I have to prove it, but I will keep proving it as long as necessary. I'm here, Caleb. I'm staying, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." His throat worked. "Why?" "Because this is my home now. Because those are my cattle, too, technically. Because—" She stopped herself. "Because what?" "Because I'm falling for you, you stubborn, broken, infuriating man." But she couldn't say that. Not yet. Maybe not ever. "Because it's the right thing to do," she finished. Caleb studied her for a long moment. His eyes held something she couldn't quite read. Gratitude, maybe. Or fear. Or hope. "You're tougher than you look, Evelyn Boone. Don't sound so surprised." "I'm not. Not anymore." They sat in silence, drinking coffee, listening to the storm rage outside. And for the first time since arriving at this isolated ranch, Evelyn didn't feel alone. Neither of them did. The morning after the storm dawned clear and cold, like the weather was apologizing for its tantrum. Evelyn woke with every muscle screaming in protest. Her shoulders ached. Her hands were covered in small cuts and scrapes. Her back felt like someone had beaten it with a board. Worth it, though. She dragged herself out of bed and found Caleb already in the kitchen, moving just as stiffly as she felt. He had a bruise darkening along his jaw that she didn't remember from last night. "Coffee's ready," he said, not quite meeting her eyes. "Thank you." They sat across from each other, both too sore to pretend otherwise. Caleb kept flexing his right hand like it hurt. Evelyn noticed his knuckles were split and bleeding. "Let me see that," she said. "It's fine." "Caleb." He sighed and extended his hand. The knuckles were definitely split, dirt still embedded in the wounds. Evelyn got up, ignoring her protesting muscles, and retrieved the small medicine kit she'd found in the pantry weeks ago. She dampened a clean cloth and started carefully cleaning his hand. Caleb sat very still, watching her work. "This is going to sting," she warned, reaching for the bottle of alcohol. "I've had worse." She dabbed the alcohol on. He didn't flinch, but his jaw tightened. "You should have said something last night," Evelyn murmured, wrapping the knuckles with clean strips of cloth. "Had other priorities." "Like what?" "Making sure you didn't catch pneumonia from standing in freezing rain for 2 hours." Evelyn's hands stilled. She looked up and found him watching her with an expression that made her heart skip. "I'm fine," she said. "You were shaking so hard I thought your teeth would crack." "So were you." "I'm used to it." "That doesn't make it better." Caleb's mouth twitched. "You gonna lecture me about taking care of myself?" "Someone should." "And you're volunteering?" "Apparently." She finished wrapping his hand, her fingers lingering a moment longer than strictly necessary. Caleb's other hand came up, almost touching hers, then pulled back. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You're welcome." The moment stretched between them, fragile and charged. Then Caleb cleared his throat and stood. "I need to check on that fence. Make sure it held through the night." "I'll come with you." "Evelyn, you can barely move." "Neither can you." "I'm not the one who spent yesterday learning fence repair in a thunderstorm." "No, you're just the one who's been doing it for years with no help and probably has permanent damage to your back because of it." He stared at her. "How did you—" "I've seen how you stand up in the mornings, Caleb. The way you stretch before doing heavy work. You hide it well, but not well enough." Something flickered across his face, surprise maybe that she'd noticed, that she'd paid attention. "It's not that bad," he said. "Liar." "Fine, it's that bad. Still my problem to deal with." "Or," Evelyn said, "you could let someone help you for once in your life instead of being stubborn about everything." "I'm not stubborn." She just looked at him. Caleb's lips twitched again. "All right. Maybe a little stubborn." "A little?" "Don't push your luck, Mrs. Boone." But there was warmth in his voice that hadn't been there before. Something that felt almost like affection. They rode out together on Dolly. Evelyn had gotten good enough that Caleb trusted her on the gentler horse alone. The black gelding, whose name turned out to be Storm, lived up to his reputation by trying to bite Caleb's shoulder twice before they even left the yard. "He's always like this?" Evelyn asked. "Worse on Mondays." "How can you tell it's Monday?" "He's extra opinionated." Despite everything, Evelyn laughed. The sound surprised both of them. Caleb glanced at her, something soft in his expression. "You should do that more." "What, laugh at your terrible jokes about temperamental horses?" "Just laugh in general. Haven't had much reason to lately." "Yeah," Caleb said quietly. "I know. I'm sorry about that." Evelyn's chest tightened. "You're trying now. That's what matters." They reached the fence line to find it still standing, barely. In daylight, their repair work looked even more precarious than it had felt in the storm. Wire twisted at odd angles. Posts leaned like drunks. But it was holding. "We'll need to redo this properly," Caleb said, dismounting. "But it'll last a few more days." "I'll help." "You don't have to." "I know, I want to." He studied her for a moment, then nodded. "All right. But we do it during the day this time, in reasonable weather, while I can actually see what I'm doing." "Agreed." They spent the next hour reinforcing the worst spots, working in comfortable silence. Evelyn was getting better at anticipating what Caleb needed, handing him tools before he asked, holding wire taut while he secured it, steadying posts while he drove them deeper. Teamwork. Partnership. The thing they'd agreed to from the beginning, but were only now actually achieving. When they finished, Caleb stood back and surveyed their work with something like satisfaction. "Not bad," he said. "High praise from you." "I mean it. You've got good instincts for this." "Thanks. Though I suspect good instincts mostly means I'm willing to get dirty and don't complain when things are hard. That's more than most people manage." There was weight behind those words. Evelyn thought about Margaret, who'd left when things got difficult. About the loneliness Caleb had been living with for years. About how hard it must be for him to trust that someone would stay. "I meant what I said last night," she told him. "I'm not going anywhere." Caleb's throat worked. "I'm starting to believe that." Good. They rode back as the sun climbed higher, burning off the last remnants of storm clouds. The land looked washed clean, everything sharper and brighter. Evelyn breathed in the smell of wet earth and sage, feeling something settle in her chest. This was home. Actually, genuinely home. Not because the house was fancy or the work was easy or even because she had any particular love for ranching, but because for the first time in her life she felt like she belonged somewhere, like she mattered to someone. That afternoon, Danny showed up looking worried. "Mr. Boone, got a problem. The Miller Ranch is selling off stock cheap. Sickness went through their herd and they're trying to cut losses. Half the ranchers in the county are heading over there this afternoon to see what they can buy." Caleb's expression darkened. "How cheap?" "Real cheap, maybe half what you'd normally pay." "What kind of sickness?" "Don't know for sure, some kind of fever, I heard." Caleb was quiet for a moment, thinking. Evelyn could see him calculating the risk versus the potential gain. Good breeding stock at half price could transform the ranch, but sick cattle could destroy it. "I should go look," he said finally. "Even if I don't buy, I should know what's circulating. Don't want it spreading to our herd." "You want me to come with?" Danny asked. "No, stay here. Keep an eye on the north fence." Caleb glanced at Evelyn. "I'll be back by evening." "Be careful." Something passed between them. A shared look that felt more intimate than words. "Always am," Caleb said, and left. Evelyn watched him ride off, feeling oddly anxious about his absence, which was ridiculous. He'd been leaving the ranch regularly since she arrived. This was no different, except it felt different. Everything felt different now. She threw herself into work to distract herself, finished the mending that had been piling up, weeded the garden, started bread dough for tomorrow, checked on the chickens. The afternoon crawled by. Evening came. No Caleb. Evelyn made dinner anyway, keeping it warm on the stove, told herself there was nothing to worry about. He'd probably gotten caught up in negotiations or stopped to talk with other ranchers. Perfectly normal. Full dark arrived. Still no Caleb. Now Evelyn was genuinely worried. She stepped out onto the porch, straining to hear hoofbeats. Nothing but wind and the distant call of coyotes. Danny appeared from the bunkhouse, looking concerned. He's not back yet? No? That's not like him. Mr. Boone's always back before dark unless something's wrong. Evelyn's stomach clenched. Should we go look for him? In the dark? We'd never find him. Better to wait till first light. What if he's hurt? Then him being hurt in the dark with us lost trying to find him doesn't help anybody. Danny's young face was serious. I know it's hard, ma'am, but waiting's the right call. Evelyn wanted to argue, wanted to saddle Dolly and ride out searching, but Danny was right. She'd get lost, probably hurt herself, and make everything worse. All right, she said, but if he's not back by dawn... By dawn? I'll ride out myself, I promise. Danny went back to the bunkhouse. Evelyn stood on the porch a while longer, staring into darkness, before finally going inside. She tried to read. Couldn't focus. Tried to sleep. Couldn't relax. Midnight came and went. 1 in the morning, 2. Evelyn was sitting at the kitchen table, pointlessly reorganizing the salt and pepper shakers for the 3rd time when she heard it. Hoofbeats. She ran to the door, yanked it open. Caleb rode into the yard on Storm, slumped in the saddle, moving wrong. Evelyn was down the porch steps before she thought about it, reaching Storm's side as Caleb tried to dismount and nearly fell. She caught him, or tried to. He was too heavy for her to hold up, but she managed to slow his fall so he landed sitting instead of sprawling. What happened? She demanded. I'm fine. You are absolutely not fine. You can barely sit upright. Just tired. Caleb, his horse threw me on his way back, spooked at something in the dark. I landed wrong. Evelyn's heart stopped. Where? Where did you land? Left side, ribs mostly. She helped him stand. He moved like every breath hurt and got him into the house. He collapsed into a kitchen chair, face pale with pain. Let me see, Evelyn said. It's not, let me see, or I'm riding into town right now to get the doctor. Caleb sighed and carefully unbuttoned his shirt. The bruising was spectacular. His entire left side was mottled purple and black, already swelling. Evelyn touched it gently and he hissed. Ribs are probably cracked, she said. Maybe broken. Yeah. Why didn't you go to the doctor in town? Because I needed to get home. Caleb, I needed to get home to you, he said quietly, in case you were worried. The words hit her square in the chest. Of course I was worried, you idiot. You were supposed to be back hours ago. I know. I'm sorry. Evelyn blinked back sudden tears. Don't apologize. Just let me help you. She cleaned the scrapes on his hands and arms where he'd hit the ground, got him water and the bottle of whiskey she'd found in the pantry, for medicinal purposes, she told herself, made him drink enough to take the edge off the pain. Then she helped him to his room. He moved like an old man, every step carefully measured. Getting him onto the bed was an ordeal that left both of them breathing hard. You should probably wrap the ribs, Caleb said. Tight, so they don't shift. I don't know how. I'll talk you through it. So at 2:30 in the morning, Evelyn found herself wrapping strips of cloth around Caleb's torso while he gave terse instructions, both of them trying to ignore the intimacy of the situation. Tighter. I don't want to hurt you. It's going to hurt either way. At least this way I can breathe tomorrow. She pulled the cloth tighter, watching his face for signs she was making it worse. Good, he said. Now tie it off. She did, her fingers fumbling with the knot. When she finished, Caleb leaned back against the pillows, eyes closed. Thank you, he said. You're welcome. Evelyn started to leave. Wait! She turned. Caleb was looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. I'm glad you were here, he said. I'm glad you stayed. Evelyn's throat tightened. Where else would I be? A lot of places. Better places, probably. There's nowhere I'd rather be. The words hung in the air between them. Caleb's hand moved slightly, like he might reach for her, then stopped. You should get some sleep, he said instead. So should you. Yeah. Evelyn lingered another moment, then forced herself to leave. In her own room, she lay awake listening for sounds from across the hall. Once, she heard him shift and groan. She almost went to check on him, but he'd asked for space, and she needed to respect that, even if every instinct she had was screaming at her to go to him. The next morning, Caleb was worse. He couldn't get out of bed without help, couldn't take a full breath without pain radiating through his chest. Evelyn brought him breakfast and watched him eat left-handed because moving his right arm pulled the damaged ribs. "You're not working today," she informed him. "Can't just stop." "Yes, you can. Danny and I will handle the essential stuff. Everything else can wait." "Evelyn, this is not a discussion, Caleb. You're injured. You need to rest. End of story." He looked like he wanted to argue, but the pain in his side must have won because he just nodded. "Thank you," he said quietly. Evelyn spent the day running the ranch with Danny's help, feeding animals, checking fences, dealing with a pump that had decided today was a great day to malfunction. It was exhausting, but she managed. Every few hours, she checked on Caleb, brought him food, made sure he was taking water, changed the wrapping on his ribs when it started to loosen. By the third day, he was improving. By the fifth, he could move around without looking like he was dying. By the seventh, he was back to light work despite Evelyn's protests. "I've been laying around like an invalid long enough," he said. "You have broken ribs. Cracked ribs. That's not better." "Evelyn, I appreciate the concern, but I'm fine." "You're not fine. You're just stubborn. Can be both." She glared at him. He almost smiled. "Compromise," he offered. "I'll take it easy, no heavy lifting, but I need to move around or I'll go crazy." "Fine, but if you re-injure yourself, I'm tying you to the bed." Caleb's eyebrows rose. His ears went red. Evelyn realized what she'd said. Her own face flamed. "I meant, for medical purposes, to keep you from—" "I know what you meant." "Right, yes, obviously." They stared at each other, both thoroughly embarrassed. Then Caleb laughed. It was the first time Evelyn had heard him really laugh. Not just a huff of amusement, but an actual, genuine laugh. It transformed his whole face, made him look years younger, almost boyish. "You should do that more," Evelyn said softly. "What, embarrass myself?" "Laugh. You look happy when you laugh." The laughter faded, but the warmth in his expression remained. "Haven't had much to laugh about in a long time," he admitted. "But lately—" He trailed off, looking at her in a way that made her heart race. "Lately?" she prompted. "Lately things feel different. Better." "Because of the organized supply shed?" "Because of you." The words landed between them like a confession. Evelyn's breath caught. "Caleb, I know what we agreed to," he said quickly. "Practical arrangement. No expectations. And if that's all you want, I'll respect that. But I need you to know it's not all I want. Not anymore." Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it. "What do you want?" "I don't know. Something more. Something real." He looked frustrated with himself. "I'm not good at this. Talking about feelings. Margaret used to get so angry because I couldn't just say what I meant." "You're doing fine." "I'm really not." "Caleb." Evelyn stepped closer. "What are you trying to say?" He met her eyes, his own storm cloud gray and fierce. "I'm trying to say that when I got thrown from that horse, the first thing I thought about was getting back to you. That when you spend all day working yourself half to death keeping this ranch running, I notice. That those ridiculous wilted flowers I left were because I saw them and thought you might like them. That somewhere between you reorganizing my supply shed and telling me I'm an idiot for working in a thunderstorm, I started—" He stopped, jaw working. "I started caring about you. More than I should. More than is safe." Evelyn felt tears prick her eyes. "You think I don't feel the same way?" she asked quietly. "You think I spent the night terrified you weren't coming home because I'm just worried about losing a business partner?" Hope flickered across his face. "Evelyn, I ran away from San Antonio because I couldn't stand the idea of being owned by someone who saw me as property, and I came here expecting exactly what you advertised. Practical arrangement, nothing more. But you—" She shook her head. "You're infuriating and stubborn and emotionally constipated, but you're also kind in ways you don't want anyone to see. You notice things. You care even when you pretend not to. And somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing this as just survival and started seeing it as what? As home. As the place I want to be. As—" She took a breath. "As the person I want to be with." Caleb closed the distance between them in 2 steps. For a moment they just stood there, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him, see the rapid pulse in his throat. "I want to kiss you," he said roughly. "But I want to make sure you want that too." That I'm not pushing. Evelyn grabbed his shirt and pulled him down. The kiss was everything their relationship had been, rough around the edges, slightly awkward, but fiercely honest. Caleb's hand came up to cup her face, gentle despite his calloused palm. Evelyn's fingers tangled in his hair, holding him close. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Caleb rested his forehead against hers. "We should probably talk about this," he said. "Probably. Figure out what it means. Eventually." Evelyn, she kissed him again, softer this time. "It means we stop pretending this is just business," she said against his mouth. "It means we stop hiding what we feel because we're scared of being hurt. It means we try, actually try, together." "I'm terrible at this," Caleb warned. "I'll mess it up, say the wrong thing, forget to tell you stuff I should tell you. And I'm stubborn and opinionated, and I'll probably reorganize more of your things without asking. I can live with that. Can you?" "For you, yeah, I can." They stood there holding each other, and Evelyn felt something shift, the final wall between them crumbling, the distance they'd maintained for protection finally closing. It wasn't perfect. They'd still fight, still struggle with trust and vulnerability and all the ways they'd been hurt before, but it was real. And real was worth fighting for. That kiss changed everything and nothing at the same time. They still woke before dawn, still worked until their hands ached and their backs protested, still ate dinner across from each other at the worn kitchen table. But now Caleb's hand would find hers as they walked to the barn. Now Evelyn would lean against him on the porch after sunset, his arm around her shoulders. Now goodnight came with a kiss that made leaving for separate bedrooms feel like the hardest thing either of them had ever done. "We should talk about that," Evelyn said one evening about a week after their first kiss. They were sitting on the porch steps, watching the sun bleed orange across the horizon. "About what?" Caleb's fingers were tracing idle patterns on her shoulder. "About why you're still sleeping in your room, and I'm still sleeping in mine when we're married and just spent 10 minutes kissing like teenagers behind the barn." Caleb's hand stilled. "I didn't want to assume." "Assume what?" "That you wanted more than kissing." Evelyn turned to look at him. "Do you want more than kissing?" His ears went red. Even after everything, certain topics still made him blush like a boy. "Yeah," he admitted, "but I wanted you to be ready, not feel pressured. Caleb, we've been married for almost 3 months. A practical marriage. That was the agreement. The agreement changed. I know, but..." He struggled for words. "Margaret and I, we jumped into everything fast. Didn't take time to actually know each other. I don't want to make the same mistake." Evelyn absorbed this. "So you're being careful, trying to, probably doing it wrong." "You're not doing it wrong. You're being thoughtful. But Caleb?" She waited until he met her eyes. "I'm not Margaret, and what we have isn't what you had with her. You can't keep comparing." "I know that. In my head, I know that. But sometimes you get scared that I'll leave too." "Yeah." Evelyn took his hand, lacing their fingers together. "I need you to hear me. Really hear me. I left San Antonio with $3 and desperation. I came here because I had nowhere else to go. But I'm staying because I want to. Because this ranch, this life, you're what I choose. Not because I'm trapped, but because I'm free here in ways I've never been free anywhere else." Caleb's throat worked. "You mean that?" "Every word." He kissed her then, deep and thorough, his hand tangling in her hair. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against hers. "Stay with me tonight," he said. "Not in your room. In mine. Took you long enough to ask." "Evelyn?" "Yes." The answer is yes. That night, Evelyn discovered that Caleb's room was almost as sparse as hers. A larger bed, a dresser with all its knobs intact, a window that looked east toward the sunrise. But no personal touches, no photographs, no decorations. Like he'd been living in a way station instead of a home. "We should fix this," she said, looking around. "Fix what?" "This room. Make it feel less like a monk's cell." Caleb glanced around as if seeing it for the first time. "I guess it is pretty bare." "Pretty bare?" "Caleb, prisoners have more comfortable accommodations." "I didn't see the point before, just a place to sleep." "And now?" He pulled her close. "Now it's where we sleep. That changes things." They made love that night with the awkwardness of two people learning each other for the first time. Evelyn had limited experience, one fumbling encounter years ago that had been more uncomfortable than pleasant. Caleb was gentle, but clearly out of practice, and once he apologized for bumping her nose with his chin. "We're terrible at this," Evelyn said, half laughing. "Absolutely terrible," Caleb agreed. "Want to stop?" "Not even a little bit." They figured it out eventually, more through determination than grace. And if it wasn't perfect, if there were moments of confusion and whispered, "Is this okay?" and readjusting positions, it was still theirs, still real. Afterward, Evelyn lay with her head on Caleb's chest, listening to his heartbeat slow, feeling his fingers trace patterns on her shoulder. "That was," Caleb started, "awkward?" "I was going to say worth waiting for." Liar. "Okay, it was both, but mostly the second thing." Evelyn smiled against his skin. "We'll get better with practice." "Is that a promise?" "Definitely a promise." They fell asleep tangled together, and when Evelyn woke before dawn to find herself still wrapped in Caleb's arms, she felt something settle deep in her chest. This was right. This was home. The change in their relationship was obvious to everyone. Danny took one look at them the next morning and grinned. "About time," he said. "Mind your business," Caleb told him, but there was no heat in it. "Yes, sir. Just saying, Mrs. Boone looks happier. You do too." After Danny left, Evelyn turned to Caleb. "Do I look happier?" "Yeah, you do." "So do you." "Feels strange," Caleb admitted. "Being happy, like I'm waiting for something to go wrong." "That's a terrible way to live." "I know, working on it." And he was. Slowly, carefully, Caleb was learning to trust that this, them, was real and lasting. He still had bad days when he pulled back, when old fears made him distant. But now Evelyn knew how to reach him, a hand on his arm, a quiet "talk to me," the patience to wait while he wrestled his thoughts into words. "I keep thinking about what happens when you realize you made a mistake," he told her one night. "What mistake?" "Choosing this, choosing me. This ranch is hard work and isolation and nothing fancy. You could have had better." "Better how?" "A husband who saw me as property? A life where I had to pretend to be someone I'm not? A life with more comfort, more society, more," he gestured vaguely, "more emptiness? More fakery? Caleb, I grew up in that world. The parties and the pretty dresses and the rules about everything. And I was miserable. Here, I'm covered in dirt half the time and my hands are rough and I fall into bed exhausted every night. But I'm happy, genuinely, actually happy." "You sure about that?" "I'm sure about you." He kissed her like she was the only real thing in his world. Maybe she was. 3 weeks after they'd stopped pretending their marriage was just practical, Evelyn found something that changed everything. She'd been going through her mother's things, the few items she'd managed to smuggle out of San Antonio. A photograph, a handkerchief with embroidered flowers, and a small wooden box she hadn't opened in years. Inside was a carved bird, a sparrow, wings spread like it was mid-flight. Her mother had kept it on her dresser, said it reminded her that even small things could be strong enough to soar. Evelyn held it carefully, memory washing over her. Her mother's voice, her gentle hands, the way she'd made even hard times feel manageable. "What's that?" She hadn't heard Caleb come in. He stood in the doorway of their bedroom, not just his, looking curious. "Something my mother had. A carved sparrow. I'd forgotten I packed it." Caleb moved closer, studying the small figure. "It's beautiful. She got it from my father before he died. Said it was the only thing of value he ever gave her, not because of the wood, but because of what it meant." Evelyn traced the carved wings. "I lost it when Marcus took over the house. Thought it was gone forever. But I found it in her jewelry box the night before I left and grabbed it." "Your stepfather sounds like a real piece of work." "That's putting it mildly." Evelyn set the sparrow down carefully. "He married my mother for her money, drank most of it away, then spent the rest of his life angry that she'd had the audacity to die and leave him with a stepdaughter he didn't want." Caleb's expression darkened. "He hit you." It wasn't a question. Sometimes, when he was drunk enough. When I talked back or didn't move fast enough or just existed in a way that annoyed him. She touched her cheek where the bruise had been. This was from the night I refused to marry Horace. Marcus said I was ungrateful, said he'd found me a good match and I was throwing it away out of stubbornness. Good match, Caleb said flatly. Horace Drummond, 47 years old, owns the largest bank in San Antonio, on his third wife. The first two died under mysterious circumstances that everyone whispers about, but nobody investigates because he's rich and connected. Evelyn's hands clenched. Marcus didn't care, just saw the money and the social elevation. I told him I'd rather die, and he said that could be arranged. Caleb pulled her close, his arms tight around her. You're safe here. He can't touch you. I know. If he comes looking, he won't. Marcus is lazy. He wanted me married off so he didn't have to deal with me anymore. Now that I'm gone, he's probably relieved. Still, if anyone shows up asking questions, then we deal with it together. Caleb pressed a kiss to her hair. Together. I like the sound of that. Later that week, Caleb disappeared for an entire afternoon with no explanation. Evelyn tried not to be annoyed. He was entitled to privacy, but curiosity ate at her. Where had he gone? Why the secrecy? She found out at dinner when he set a small wrapped package next to her plate. What's this? Open it. Inside was a carved wooden sparrow, wings spread in flight. Not identical to her mother's, the style was rougher, more raw, but clearly made with care. Evelyn's throat tightened. You made this? Tried to. I'm not much of a carver. Danny's grandfather does woodwork, and he gave me some pointers. Took me 6 tries to get one that didn't look like a deformed chicken. Caleb, you said you lost yours. I can't replace it, but I thought maybe... He trailed off, looking uncertain. If you don't like it, that's fine. I can... Evelyn kissed him, hard and fierce. The wooden bird pressed between their palms. I love it, she said when they broke apart. I love it, and I love you for making it. Caleb went very still. What did you just say? Evelyn's heart hammered. She hadn't meant to say it, not yet, not like this, but it was out now and she couldn't take it back. Didn't want to take it back. I said I love you. I know we're still figuring this out, and I know you're not ready to hear it, and I don't expect you to say it back, but I love you too. Now it was Evelyn's turn to freeze. What? I love you. Have for a while now. Maybe since you told me my organizational system was chaos. Maybe since you fought beside me in that storm. Maybe since the first moment you stood up to me instead of backing down. He cupped her face in his rough hands. I'm terrible at saying it, worse at showing it. But Evelyn, you're the best thing that's ever happened to me, and I'm grateful every single day that you answered that stupid advertisement. Evelyn felt tears spill over. You're not terrible at showing it. The flowers, the water outside my door, fixing things before I notice they're broken, this... She held up the carved sparrow. You show it all the time. You just don't use words. I should use words more. You should. But I'm learning to speak your language too. They made love that night with new urgency, new tenderness. Whispered, I love you, between kisses, learning the shape of the words in each other's mouths. Afterward, Evelyn set the wooden sparrow on the dresser next to her mother's, the 2 birds side by side. Perfect, she said. Caleb pulled her back to bed. Yeah, it really is. The next morning brought trouble in the form of a visitor. Evelyn was in the garden pulling weeds when she heard hoofbeats. Not Caleb. He'd ridden out an hour ago to check the water pump. Not Danny. Different rhythm. She stood, shading her eyes, and saw a rider approaching. Well-dressed, expensive horse. The kind of person who didn't belong on a working ranch. Her stomach clenched. The man pulled up near the house, dismounted with the ease of someone who'd grown up riding. He was middle-aged, clean-shaven, wearing a suit that probably cost more than the ranch made in a month. Help you? Evelyn asked, keeping her voice neutral. The man turned, and recognition slammed into her. Thomas Whitfield, Marcus's business partner, the man who'd witnessed her engagement to Horace Drummond. Miss Mercer, he said, smiling. Or should I say Mrs. Boone? I have to admit, I'm impressed. Running away to become a rancher's wife, very dramatic. Evelyn's heart was racing, but she kept her expression calm. Mr. Whitfield, what are you doing here? Marcus sent me. He wants you to come home. This is my home. Is it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're playing pretend on a failing ranch in the middle of nowhere. He glanced around with obvious disdain. Surely you can't prefer this to the life you had. The life I had was a cage. This is freedom. Freedom to do what? Break your back working land that'll never yield anything worthwhile. Marcus told me about your husband, Caleb Boone, a rancher who can barely keep his own property afloat, who drove away his first wife, who advertised for a replacement like he was buying livestock. You don't know anything about him. I know he's not your equal. You're educated, cultured, raised in society, and you're wasting yourself here. I'm not wasted. I'm happy. Whitfield's expression hardened. Marcus is offering you one chance to return with your reputation intact. Come back now. Marry Horace as planned, and this little adventure will be forgotten. Stay here, and he'll make sure everyone knows you ran away like a common thief. He's already spreading rumors that you stole money when you left. I took $3 that were my own earnings. That's not how he's telling it. He's painting you as ungrateful, disturbed, possibly dangerous. By the time he's done, no one will believe anything you say. Evelyn felt cold despite the morning heat. Why does he care? He wanted me gone. He wanted you married to Horace. The deal was worth a lot of money to him. When you disappeared, Horace withdrew the offer. Whitfield smiled, and it was sharp. Marcus needs that marriage to happen. So you're going to come back and fulfill your obligation. No, I don't think you understand. If you refuse, Marcus will make life very difficult for your husband. A few words in the right ears, and suddenly Mr. Boone can't get credit in town, can't sell his cattle, can't get loans to keep this place running. Is that what you want? Before Evelyn could respond, a voice cut through the tension. You threatening my wife? Caleb stood near the barn, must have come back without her noticing. His expression was dangerously calm. Whitfield turned. Mr. Boone, I presume I was just explaining to Miss Mercer. Mrs. Boone, Caleb corrected, moving to stand beside Evelyn. And I heard what you were explaining. Threats and manipulation. Real impressive. I'm simply delivering a message from her stepfather. Message delivered. Now get off my property. Mr. Boone, I don't think you understand the position you're in. Marcus Bellamy has significant influence in San Antonio. He can make things very difficult for you. Let him try. Caleb's voice was steel. My wife isn't going anywhere. You want to ruin my credit? Fine. Want to spread rumors? Go ahead. But Evelyn stays here because she wants to, and no amount of threats from a drunk bully and his lackey is going to change that. Whitfield's face flushed. You're making a mistake. Wouldn't be my first, but marrying Evelyn sure as hell wasn't one of them. Evelyn felt something fierce and warm bloom in her chest. Whitfield looked between them, clearly reassessing. You really choose this? This life? Every single day, Evelyn said. Then you're a fool. He mounted his horse. Marcus won't give up easily. This isn't over. Yeah, it is, Caleb said. And if he sends anyone else, they'll get the same answer. Now get out. Whitfield rode off, dust rising behind his expensive horse. When he was gone, Evelyn turned to Caleb. He meant those threats. Marcus has connections. He could actually hurt the ranch. I know. You're not worried? I'm furious, but not worried. Caleb took her hand. I've lost everything before. Built it back up from nothing. If he wants to try and break me, let him. He'll find out I'm harder to break than I look. We both are. Yeah, we are. Danny came running from the bunkhouse. Everything okay? I saw that fancy rider leave looking angry. Everything's fine, Caleb said. But Danny, if anyone comes asking about Evelyn or me, you don't know anything. Got it? Yes, sir. What's going on? Trouble from her past trying to become trouble in our present. But we're handling it. Danny nodded seriously. I got your back, Mr. Boone. Both of you. After he left, Evelyn sagged against Caleb. What if Marcus actually does come after us? Then we deal with it. Together. Same as everything else. He tipped her chin up. I meant what I said. You're not going anywhere. This is your home. I'm your home. And I'll fight anyone who tries to take that away from you. Even if it costs you the ranch? The ranch is just land and cattle. You're what matters. Evelyn kissed him, hard and desperate and grateful. When they broke apart, Caleb rested his forehead against hers. We should get married again, he said. We're already married. I mean properly. in front of people. Make it so official that no one can question it. Marcus can't claim you're not really my wife if the whole town watched us exchange vows. You want a real wedding? I want everyone to know you chose me, chose this, that it's real. Evelyn's eyes burned. Okay. Yes, let's do that. Yeah? Yeah, let's get married, Caleb Boone, for real this time, with witnesses and vows and everything we didn't have the first time. He kissed her again, softer now. I love you. I love you too. They stood there holding each other while the sun climbed higher and the ranch hummed with life around them. Two people who'd found each other in desperation and built something worth fighting for. Whatever came next, Marcus's threats, the ranch's struggles, the hard work of making a life together, they'd face it side by side. And that made all the difference. The wedding was set for 3 weeks out, which gave Marcus Bellamy exactly enough time to make his next move. It came in the form of a letter delivered by the town postmaster, who looked uncomfortable handing it over. Mrs. Boone, this came for you, from San Antonio. The man who brought it said it was urgent. Evelyn's hands trembled as she took the envelope. Heavy paper, Marcus's distinctive scrawl across the front. She waited until she was alone in the kitchen before opening it. The letter was short and venomous. Evelyn, your little rebellion has gone on long enough. You will return to San Antonio within the week and fulfill your obligation to marry Horace Drummond, or I will ensure your rancher husband loses everything. I've already spoken with the bank in Red Hollow. One word from me, and his loans will be called in immediately. His cattle won't sell at market. His land will be foreclosed. Think carefully about whether your pride is worth destroying an innocent man's life. You have 7 days. Marcus. Evelyn read it twice, rage and fear warring in her chest. Caleb found her an hour later, still sitting at the table, the letter clutched in her hand. What's wrong? She handed him the letter without speaking. His expression darkened as he read. When he finished, he set it down carefully, like it might explode. He's bluffing. Is he? You said yourself the ranch is barely holding on financially. If the bank calls in your loans, let them. I'll figure something out. Caleb, you could lose everything. I've lost everything before. I survived. This is different. This is because of me. No. Caleb's voice was hard. This is because your stepfather is a controlling bastard who can't stand that you escaped. Don't you dare take responsibility for his actions. But if I just went back, stop. Caleb grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to meet his eyes. You're not going back. I don't care what he threatens. I don't care if I lose the ranch, the cattle, everything I've built. You are not going back to that life. You don't mean that. I absolutely mean it. Evelyn, this land is just dirt. Those cattle are just animals, but you, his voice cracked slightly, you're the only thing that actually matters. If choosing you means losing everything else, then that's the easiest choice I've ever made. Evelyn felt tears spill over. I can't let you sacrifice everything for me. You're not letting me do anything. I'm choosing this, choosing you. Same way you chose me when you could have had an easier life anywhere else. There's no easier life without you in it. Caleb pulled her close, holding her tight. Then we fight. Together. And whatever happens, we handle it together. But fighting Marcus Bellamy turned out to be more complicated than either of them anticipated. 3 days later, the banker from Red Hollow rode out to the ranch. His name was Edward Porter, a thin man with nervous hands and a weak chin. Mr. Boone, I'm afraid I have some difficult news. They were standing in the yard, Evelyn beside Caleb, Danny hovering nearby, pretending to work on a bridle. Let me guess, Caleb said. Marcus Bellamy got to you. Porter shifted uncomfortably. Mr. Bellamy has made some concerning allegations about your financial situation. He claims you're operating under false pretenses, that your marriage to Miss Mercer was— Mrs. Boone, Evelyn interrupted. My name is Mrs. Boone. Yes, well, he claims the marriage was a sham to defraud creditors, that you, Mr. Boone, married her to access her family money. Caleb laughed, short and bitter. What family money? She arrived here with $3 and a carpet bag. That's not what Mr. Bellamy says. He claims Mrs. Boone stole a significant sum when she left San Antonio. He's lying. Perhaps. But the bank has to investigate these allegations. Until we can verify the legitimacy of your marriage and your financial standing, I'm afraid we have to freeze your credit line. You're calling in my loans. Not calling them in, just freezing new extensions until this is resolved. Which means I can't buy feed, can't make repairs, can't operate. Porter looked miserable. I'm sorry, Mr. Boone. My hands are tied. If it were up to me, but it's not up to you. It's up to Marcus Bellamy and whatever lies he's feeding you. I have to follow procedure. I'm sure this will all be cleared up quickly. After Porter left, Caleb stood staring at the horizon, jaw tight. How bad is this? Evelyn asked quietly. Bad. I've got enough saved to last maybe 6 weeks if we're careful. After that, he didn't finish. There has to be something we can do. There is, Danny spoke up from where he'd been listening. You could sell some of the cattle early. Won't get top price, but it'd be cash in hand. I need those cattle for breeding stock. Sell them now, and I'm crippling the ranch long term. Better than losing it completely, Evelyn said. Caleb looked at her, something broken in his expression. I'm sorry. I should have been more careful. Should have built up more reserves. Stop. This isn't your fault. Feels like it is. That evening, they sat on the porch as the sun set, both lost in thought. Evelyn kept turning the problem over in her mind, looking for solutions that didn't exist. I could go back, she said finally. No. Just to talk to Marcus. Explain that there's no money to steal, that threatening you won't. Evelyn, no, we're not negotiating with him. Then what's your plan? Hope this resolves itself? My plan is to work harder, sell what I have to sell, make it through the next few months and prove to the bank that Bellamy's a liar. And if that's not enough, Caleb's hand found hers in the darkness. Then we start over somewhere else. You'd leave the ranch? I'd leave anything for you. I thought I made that clear. Evelyn leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling the weight of everything pressing down. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. They were supposed to get married properly, build their life together, make the ranch thrive, not fight off threats from her past while scrambling to survive. I hate him, she said quietly. I've never hated anyone before, but I hate Marcus Bellamy. That's fair. He's extremely hateable. Despite everything, she almost smiled. What are we going to do? What we always do. Wake up tomorrow and keep going. The next day brought an unexpected ally. Judge Hendricks rode out to the ranch mid-morning, which was unusual enough that both Caleb and Evelyn stopped working to meet him. Judge, Caleb said warily, what brings you out here? Heard about your trouble with the bank. Wanted to see if the rumors were true. Depends on what you heard. That Marcus Bellamy is trying to force your wife back to San Antonio by destroying your livelihood. That about sums it up. Hendricks dismounted, studying them both. I married you too. Quick ceremony, no frills, and I remember thinking it wouldn't last a month. But I've been hearing things from town, how you're fixing up the ranch, how Mrs. Boone handles herself in Red Hollow with dignity, how you two work side by side like actual partners. We are partners, Evelyn said. Evelyn. That's what I figured, which is why I'm here. The judge pulled a folded document from his coat. This is a sworn affidavit about your marriage. Date, witnesses, legal status. I'm willing to testify that the marriage is legitimate and was conducted properly under Texas law. Should help counter whatever lies Bellamy is spreading. Caleb took the document, something like hope flickering across his face. Why would you do this? Because I don't like bullies. And because despite my initial doubts, I think you two might actually make it. Hendricks smiled slightly. Also, Mrs. Patterson at the courthouse has a betting pool going about whether your marriage will last. I've got money riding on you making it past a year. Evelyn couldn't help but laugh. How much? $5, which is significant when you're a judge in Red Hollow. We'll try not to let you down. See that you don't. Hendricks tipped his hat. And Mrs. Boone? About that wedding you're planning. If you need someone to officiate properly this time, I'd be honored. Thank you, Judge. That means more than you know. After he left, Caleb held the affidavit like it was made of gold. This helps, he said. It's not everything, but it helps. Maybe we should move the wedding up, Evelyn suggested. Have it soon before Marcus can cause more trouble. Get the whole town to witness it, so there's no question. You want to rush it? I want to prove we're real, that what we have isn't something he can break or buy or threaten away. Caleb pulled her close. All right, let's do it. This weekend. Small ceremony, whole town invited, and we'll show everyone exactly what Marcus Bellamy is up against. News of the wedding spread through Red Hollow like wildfire. By Thursday, the entire town knew. By Friday, people were taking sides. Mrs. Patterson from the courthouse came by with a wedding gift, a set of embroidered pillowcases. My mother made these, wanted you to have them. The general store owner, Mr. Chen, quietly told Caleb his credit was good regardless of what the bank said. I know you're honorable. That's enough for me. Even some of the other ranchers stopped by, offering support or advice, or just their presence. But not everyone was supportive. Saturday morning, the day of the wedding, brought Marcus Bellamy himself. Evelyn was getting dressed when she heard shouting from the yard. She ran to the window and saw him, older than she remembered, heavier, face red with anger. Caleb stood between Marcus and the house, and even from a distance, Evelyn could see the tension in his shoulders. She grabbed her shawl and ran outside, Danny close behind her. Don't care what legal nonsense you've cooked up, Marcus was saying. She's coming back with me. No, she's not, Caleb said, his voice dangerously calm. She's my stepdaughter. She's my responsibility. She's 24 years old and married. Your responsibility ended the day she left San Antonio. Marcus's eyes found Evelyn. There you are. Get your things. We're leaving. I'm not going anywhere with you. Yes, you are. I'm your guardian. You stopped being my guardian the day I turned 18, and I haven't been your responsibility since my mother died. Evelyn stepped forward, surprised by her own steadiness. You wanted me gone, Marcus. You said it yourself. I was a burden, an inconvenience, something to be sold off to the highest bidder. Well, congratulations. You got your wish? I'm gone. You think you can just run away from your obligations? I arranged a marriage for you. You arranged to sell me. There's a difference. Marcus's face darkened. I could have you committed. One word about your mental instability, your delusions, your theft. I didn't steal anything. Your word against mine. And who do you think people will believe? A respected businessman or a hysterical girl? They'll believe her, a voice said from behind them. Judge Hendricks stood there, along with Mrs. Patterson, Mr. Chen, and at least a dozen other townspeople. More were gathering, drawn by the commotion. What is this? Marcus demanded. This is a community, Hendricks said. One that doesn't take kindly to outsiders coming in and making threats. I'm not making threats. I'm collecting my stepdaughter. Your stepdaughter is a married woman. She's got the legal right to choose her own life. And from where I'm standing, she's choosing to stay here. Marcus looked around at the growing crowd, clearly reassessing. Fine, but when this ranch fails, and it will fail, don't come crying to me for help. Wouldn't dream of it, Evelyn said. Marcus turned to leave, then stopped. You'll regret this, both of you. Already regretting wasting time talking to you, Caleb said. Now get off my property before I help you off. Marcus left, but the damage was done. The morning that should have been about celebration had been poisoned by his presence. Evelyn stood in the yard, shaking with adrenaline and leftover fear. You all right? Caleb asked quietly. I will be. Just give me a minute. The crowd slowly dispersed, people murmuring support as they went. Danny squeezed her shoulder. That was incredible, Mrs. Boone, the way you stood up to him. Didn't feel incredible, felt terrifying. You did it anyway, that's what counts. An hour later, Evelyn stood in her bedroom trying to calm her nerves. She was wearing her best dress, pale green cotton, carefully mended, nothing fancy but clean and pressed. Her hair was braided and pinned, a few wildflowers woven through it, courtesy of Danny's surprisingly deft fingers. There was a knock on the door. Come in. Caleb stepped inside, looking uncomfortable in his only suit. He'd shaved carefully, combed his hair, even polished his boots. He looked almost civilized, which made Evelyn smile despite her nerves. You're not supposed to see me before the wedding, she said. We're already married. Think that ship has sailed. Still, it's bad luck. Pretty sure we've used up all our bad luck already. He moved closer. You okay? After this morning? I'm fine, shaken, but fine. We don't have to do this today. If you need time, no. I want to do this today. I want everyone to see that Marcus Bellamy has no power over us anymore. She took his hand. I want to marry you, Caleb, really marry you, with vows that mean something and witnesses who matter and a future that's ours to build. He kissed her softly. Then let's go get married. The ceremony took place in front of the ranch house, under the wide Texas sky. The whole town had turned out, ranchers and shopkeepers, families and single folks, even the saloon owner with his ever-present cigar. Someone had brought benches. Someone else had strung up wildflowers. It was simple and rough around the edges and absolutely perfect. Judge Hendricks stood at the front, looking dignified in his best vest. We're gathered here today to witness the marriage of Caleb Boone and Evelyn Mercer Boone. Now, technically, they're already married, but they wanted to do it right this time, with community and commitment and vows that mean something. People chuckled. Caleb, do you take Evelyn to be your wife? To stand beside her through hard times and good times, through ranch struggles and personal battles, through everything life throws at you? Caleb's eyes never left Evelyn's face. I do. Every day for the rest of my life, I do. Evelyn, do you take Caleb to be your husband? To build a life with him here on this land, to be his partner in every sense of the word? To choose him even when it's hard? I do, Evelyn said, her voice strong and clear. I choose him. I choose this life. I choose us. Then by the power vested in me by the state of Texas, I pronounce you husband and wife. Again. Hendricks smiled. Caleb, kiss your bride. Properly this time. Caleb pulled Evelyn close and kissed her like he meant it, like she was the only real thing in his world. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. When they broke apart, both of them were grinning like fools. How's it feel to be properly married? Caleb asked. Exactly the same as being improperly married, except better. Yeah, much better. The celebration that followed was loud and chaotic and wonderful. Someone had brought a fiddle. Someone else had contributed enough whiskey to get half the town drunk. Tables appeared laden with food, contributions from everyone who'd come to witness the ceremony. Evelyn moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations, feeling the warmth of community wrap around her like a blanket. These people had chosen to support them, had stood up to Marcus, had made this feel like home. Danny found her near sunset, looking pleased with himself. Mrs. Boone got something for you. He handed her an envelope. Inside was money. Bills and coins, carefully counted. What's this? Everyone pitched in, heard about your trouble with the bank, and figured you could use a little help. It's not much, but, Danny, this is over $100. Like I said, everyone pitched in. Evelyn's eyes burned. I can't accept this. Sure you can. That's what community does. We take care of our own. She hugged him hard enough to make him squeak. Thank you. Tell everyone thank you. Yes, ma'am. She found Caleb later, showed him the money. He stared at it like he couldn't quite believe it was real. This is enough to cover feed for 2 months, he said quietly, and make some of the repairs we've been putting off. It's enough to keep going. Yeah, it is. They stood together watching their community celebrate, and Evelyn felt something settle deep in her bones. This was what belonging felt like. Not the suffocating obligation of San Antonio society, but genuine connection built on mutual support and respect. As the sun set and the party continued, Caleb pulled her aside. I've been thinking about what happens next, after today. What do you mean? Marcus isn't going to give up. He'll keep trying to cause trouble, and the ranch is still barely holding on financially. We've got breathing room now, but it's not fixed. So what do? We build something better, use this money to invest in better stock, fix the fences properly, maybe hire Danny full-time instead of part-time, work smarter instead of just harder. He took her hand, and we do it together. Real partners, not just two people surviving side by side. I like the sound of that. Me too. He kissed her forehead. I love you, Mrs. Boone. I love you too, Mr. Boone. The months that followed weren't easy. Marcus made good on his threats for a while, spreading rumors and trying to damage Caleb's reputation. But the community of Red Hollow held firm, supporting the Boone Ranch through word and deed. The cattle sale that fall brought in more than expected. Caleb had taken Evelyn's suggestion to focus on quality over quantity, and it paid off. Buyers from 3 counties came looking specifically for Boone Ranch stock. They hired Danny permanently. He moved into the fixed-up bunkhouse and became part of their small family. The garden Evelyn had been coaxing to life finally thrived. providing vegetables that they sold in town for extra income. Slowly, painfully, the ranch stabilized. A year after their second wedding, Evelyn discovered she was pregnant. She told Caleb one evening after dinner, watching his face carefully. "You're sure?" he asked. "As sure as I can be without seeing a doctor, but yeah, I'm sure." For a long moment he didn't react. Then his face crumpled, and he pulled her into his arms, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. "We're having a baby," he said, voice rough with emotion. "We're having a baby. I don't know how to be a father. I don't know how to be a mother. We'll figure it out together." "Together? Yeah." He kissed her, soft and reverent, his hand coming to rest on her still flat stomach. "I can't believe this is real," he said. "You, the ranch, now a baby. Feels like too much good after so much bad. Maybe we're due some good. Maybe we are." The baby came in early spring, a boy with Caleb's dark hair and Evelyn's stubborn chin. They named him Thomas, after Evelyn's father. He was loud and demanding and absolutely perfect. Caleb took to fatherhood with the same intensity he brought to everything else. He built a cradle with his own hands, carved with birds in flight. He paced the floor at night when Thomas wouldn't sleep. He looked at his son with such fierce love that it made Evelyn's heart ache. "Never thought I'd have this," he told her one night, holding Thomas while Evelyn finally got a few hours of sleep. "A family. A real one. You have it now," she said, watching them together. "I know. Scares me sometimes. How much I have to lose." "Then don't focus on what you could lose. Focus on what you have." "What we have," he corrected. "What we have," she agreed. "Is." 2 years later, the Boone Ranch was one of the most successful small operations in the county. They'd expanded the herd, improved the breeding stock, built a reputation for quality that brought buyers from across Texas. The house had been renovated room by room, transformed from a bare shell into an actual home with curtains and rugs and photographs on the walls. Danny had married a girl from town and built his own small house on the property. He was ranch foreman now, a title that made him stand taller with pride. The community that had supported them through the hard times now celebrated their successes. And Marcus Bellamy? They heard through the grapevine that he'd lost most of his money to bad investments and drink. Horace Drummond had married his fourth wife. Neither of them were Evelyn's problem anymore. She thought about that sometimes, about the life she'd escaped, the cage she'd been headed for, the future that would have destroyed her piece by piece. One evening, she stood on the porch watching Caleb teach 2-year-old Thomas how to feed the chickens. Their son was fearless, laughing as the birds pecked grain from his small hands, and Caleb hovered nearby with that expression he always wore around Thomas, equal parts terror and absolute devotion. Danny rode up, dusty from checking the south pasture. "Evening, Mrs. Boone. Everything look good at the house?" "Everything looks perfect. Your husband's gonna spoil that boy rotten, you know." "I know. It's wonderful to watch." Danny grinned and rode on toward his own house, where his wife was probably waiting with dinner. Evelyn leaned against the porch rail, breathing in the smell of sage and dust and home. The 2 carved sparrows still sat on the dresser in the bedroom she shared with Caleb, her mother's and his, side by side, reminding her daily that sometimes broken people could learn to fly again. Caleb and Thomas came back up to the porch, their son chattering about chickens and eggs and whatever else filled his busy toddler brain. "Mama, I feed chickens," Thomas announced proudly. "I saw. You did such a good job." "I brave like Papa." Caleb's ears went red, but he was smiling. "You're braver than me, buddy." They went inside for dinner, the 3 of them together, and Evelyn felt the same thing she felt every evening at this time. Gratitude, peace, the bone-deep certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. She'd come to this ranch desperate and afraid, expecting nothing more than survival. She'd found purpose, partnership, and a love fierce enough to weather any storm. The Texas frontier was harsh and unforgiving, but it was also a place where you could start over, build something new, become someone different from who you'd been forced to be. Evelyn had learned that you didn't need perfect circumstances to build a life worth living. You needed courage enough to choose it, strength enough to fight for it, and someone to stand beside you when the work got hard. She had all of that now. Later that night, after Thomas was asleep and the dishes were done, Evelyn and Caleb sat on the porch in the darkness. His arm was around her shoulders, Her head rested in the curve of his neck. The stars stretched overhead in their infinite indifference, and somewhere in the distance a coyote called. "Happy?" Caleb asked quietly. "Completely. Even though it's hard work and isolation and nothing fancy? Especially because of that. This life is real. I'm real here. We're real."
Yeah, we are.
They sat in comfortable silence, two people who'd learned each other's languages, who'd built something solid from nothing but determination and desperate hope. "I never thanked you," Evelyn said. "For what?" "For seeing past the practical arrangement, for letting me in even when you were scared, for loving me enough to fight Marcus. For all of it." Caleb turned her face toward his, kissed her gently. "You don't have to thank me for loving you, Evelyn. That's the easiest thing I've ever done. Everything else, the ranch, the work, dealing with your awful stepfather, that was hard. But loving you? That's as natural as breathing." She kissed him back, pouring everything she felt into it. When they finally went inside, Evelyn paused at Thomas's door, watching their son sleep. Caleb's arm came around her waist. "Think he'll remember any of this?" she asked. "The struggling, the hard times? Maybe. Or maybe he'll just remember that we fought for this, that we built something worth having." "That's a good thing to remember." "Yeah, it is." They went to their own room where the two wooden sparrows sat on the dresser catching moonlight through the window. Evelyn touched them both gently, remembering the scared girl who'd arrived here with $3 and a prayer, and the woman she'd become since. She'd learned that home wasn't a place you found. It was something you built with your own hands, your own sweat, your own stubborn refusal to give up when things got hard. She'd learned that love wasn't perfect or easy or anything like the stories promised. It was messy and difficult and required work every single day. But it was also the most worthwhile thing she'd ever done. Most importantly, she had learned that running towards something was always braver than running away. And choosing your own life, even when it was hard, even when it meant sacrificing easier options, was the only way to truly be free. Outside, the Texas wind rolled across the plains, rattling the windows and bending the grass. The land was harsh and beautiful and unforgiving. But it was theirs now, earned through hard work and harder choices. Evelyn climbed into bed beside Caleb, curling into his warmth, his arm coming automatically around her. This was home. This man, this child, this life they'd carved out of nothing. It wasn't perfect. It was real. And real was infinitely better than any fairy tale could ever be.